Hi, welcome to Poets in Pajamas number 64. I am Heidi Czerwiec. I am the essayist in pajamas for tonight, or in robe. Um, in a few minutes, I'll start reading from my book, Fluid States. But I wanted to give a few minutes for people to join in and listen since I just opened the room. Um, so tonight I'll be reading from Fluid States, which is a collection of lyric essays. I come to creative nonfiction from poetry, so I came into it writing hybrid lyric essays. And Fluid States is a collection that covers many, many different topics from perfume to canning tomatoes, fracking in Western North Dakota, an online outrage, and all of them under the heading of Fluid States, which when I was doing the manuscript, um, my idea of it was that when I was trying to come up with an excuse for why they all belonged in the same book together as a manuscript, hit upon the idea of the title Fluid States. To cover fluid like perfume and oil, and also situations that are in between, um, like the online outrage, like mushrooms, which we'll be hearing about in just a little bit. So I'll wait a couple more minutes to begin reading, and while I'm doing that, I want to thank Sundress and thank Anna for all her help getting me set up. I want to thank the Poets in Pajamas for setting this up and for letting essayists come to the party. And I want to thank Anna and Sarah who are watching already, and looking forward to seeing the rest of you pop up soon. Um, the first piece that I'm going to read from tonight is from a section of the book that's called Sweet Crude, a back and boom cycle. And this was originally done as a chapbook sequence. It was a heroic crown of sonnets, but written in prose. So there are 15 parts to it. Each is 14 sentences long. The last sentence of one becomes the first sentence of the next. And the last part is made up of the repeating sentences. And I wrote it in this form because I was trying to find a way to talk about all of the interlocking issues facing Western North Dakota, social, economic, environmental, etc. And I should also say that this sequence was written in 2013, turned 2014. So this was before the water protectors operating at Standing Rock. And it also incorporates some language I did of an erasure from Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. So I'm going to read a couple of these. Seven. In the man camps, alcohol and drugs make a good social lubricant, smoothing the highway for the thousands of roughnecks, petroleum engineers, pipeline catters, truck drivers, carpenters, contractors, and electricians, as well as journalists, adventure scientists, scholars, photographers who arrive here daily, driven across the continent onto the prairies. 2 back and bound men on meth head out from Montana. The men outnumber the women by 30%. Many leave families swimming in underwater mortgages, but otherwise safe as houses, while sex offenders and former inmates unemployable elsewhere also come, wayward past disappeared. Sherry Arnold, math teacher, heads out for her morning run. Oil companies erect dormitory-style barracks with no tolerance for guns, alcohol, drugs, or women, even spouses. Or RVs and trailers populate amenitied lots with attendant attempts to set boundaries, winterize, and hunker down for the long term. Then there are parked pickups and vans and makeshift shanty towns, frail structures insulated with styrofoam, plywood, and hay or what have you against the cold wind's stinging grit, no water or sewage. The smell carries 12 miles outside of town. Outside of town, her shoe is found. Not enough lubrication and things break down. but too much is a slippery slope. We got one guy got in this other guy's camper and he wouldn't leave, so the guy beat the shit out of him. Concealed carry permits skyrocket. We never send just one girl out alone to clean properties, and still they get propositioned. With no set boundaries, reported rapes are up 20%. A farmer finds her body abandoned in his field. Glenn Crabtree, floor hand at a rig, sports a tattoo reading fuck, fight, or trip pipe, and he'll do it too. He'll ride this boom till it busts. 8. Boom and bust through rock, literally. 2 miles vertically, then laterally 2 miles. What lies beneath you? Filter socks are prophylactics that catch the flow back from ejaculated fracking water, which is not water, but water plus a secret blend of chemicals, salts, metals, and naturally occurring radioactive material, the new norm, a hot mess of hot waste, 75 tons per day. The socks discarded in landfills till Geiger counters started clicking incessantly. After this became unacceptable, after they stopped accepting them, the only place to take them, for a fee, is a facility in far Colorado. Soon, the socks surface on the reservation, in dumpsters and abandoned buildings, on flatbeds with missing plates. Indian children at play don them, becoming ghosts. Radium conceals itself too. In young bodies, it replaces calcium to honeycomb the bone. It plays a garbled game of telephone with the DNA, lodging in the reproductive organs, the bust. Then, boom. The second piece I'm going to read today is called Consider the Lobster Mushroom, being a brief theory of the craft of creative nonfiction. And I think it's self-explanatory, so I'm just going to launch into it. The lobster mushroom, contrary to its common name, is not a mushroom, but the result of a parasitic fungus having infested a host mushroom in a peculiar symbiosis. The fungus, Hypomyces lactiflorum, typically attacks milk caps and brittle gills, absorbing them completely and imparting the bright reddish-orange color and seafood-like flavor of a cooked lobster. Creative nonfiction, too, is a symbiosis of fact infecting art, or art infecting fact. You become infected by an idea, a topic, open adoptions, fracking, the history of perfume, that absorbs you, imparting its own qualities until you're transformed, not the same person as before. Or you may play the part of parasite, cloak your work, make it take the appearance of another form, an essay disguised as a list, a letter, an index, a diary, a hermit crab essay, a lobster mushroom. Or you may think you're writing one essay, but another essay takes it over, makes it its own. Think you're writing about hiking? No, it's about your ex. A piece about the band Morphine and the Matrix's Morpheus and the Sandman comics? Nope, your ex. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Lobster mushrooms are much more valuable than the mushrooms they infect. About $25 a pound fresh or $50 dried at last check. You should remember that both creative nonfiction and lobster mushrooms, like all fungus, feed off of dead matter, are in turn fed off of. You don't always get there first. Sometimes appalling creatures have nested inside it. Sometimes stuff you knew was there, sometimes stuff you forgot was there, sometimes unexpected stuff you uncover. You might be cutting through a mushroom when a centipede or earwig or worm crawls out of the hole it's burrowed into the flesh. Fuck, you may yell, dropping the mushroom. Now you have to decide what to do next. A. Sweep the mushroom into the trash. Burn trash. Burn house. No mushroom, no matter how valuable it might have seemed, is worth this toxic invasion. B. Pick up the mushroom and examine the damage. How deep does it go? Has the nastiness laid eggs? Are there others? You may feel hesitant to give up on the mushroom, but sometimes you have to negotiate the value of the mushroom against how compromised it's become. If there's too much damage, go back to A. Otherwise, continue to C. Remind yourself of two things. One, if you can't deal with the mushroom now, it will come back. It will always come back, popping up whether you want it to or no, because it's part of a larger system. Mycelia feeding on what's rotten, what lurks always beneath the surface. If you decide in the future you're ready to pluck it and make something of it, it will be there, mushrooming. 2. You don't have to reveal the source of your mushrooms. Few enthusiasts do, going to great lengths to conceal their sites by lying, covering their tracks. But most are happy to share the fruits of their labors, the fruited mushroom, the finished product, however fraught. You can share without sharing everything. D. Decide you have worked too hard for this mushroom. It is too valuable to let go. This is your fucking mushroom. Find a way to deal with the damage. 1. Cut it out completely. 2. Work around it. Convince yourself it will be altered in the shaping, cooking of it anyways. Keep what isn't too bad, what you can still use, what's of value. If you can deal with it, so can everyone else. 3. Take a deep breath and swallow it whole, bugs and all. But here's the thing. The lobster mushroom, the parasitic fungus, has a superpower. It infests mushrooms, matter that is otherwise inedible, possibly toxic, and makes it safe for consumption, palatable, even delicious. Is this a craft essay infected by a lyric essay, or a lyric essay infected by a craft essay? I want to remind people that I'll be taking some questions at the end of my reading. And now I need to figure out what just happened to my screen and see where I am. Okay, there I am. I'm back. Okay, hope you could still see me. And I am going to take questions at the end of this. And I'm going to finish by reading a couple of pieces from the first sequence in the book called Decants, which is about perfume. Yeah. And this first one is called Cuir, which my French is horrible. I apologize up front about it. Cuir, C-U-I-R, is French for leather. And this piece is kind of a history of perfumery via wordplay. And most of the pieces in this sequence are written in haibun, which is a lyric essay form, which I thought paired really well with perfume because at points it distills into a haiku. And so that distillation and that concentration, like perfume, but also that haiku attempts to capture the ephemeral, which also like perfume. Okay, Cuir. And most of the proper nouns that I mention are names of famous leather-based perfumes. Cuir. Scent and leather go hand in glove. Leather is an old word, much unchanged for the hides of dead beasts. The Guild of Gantiers rode the gauntlet of leather goods and required nauseous quantities of nitrogenous piss to preserve, sterilize, and tan their hides pliable. Medieval streets ran with nitrogenous piss, and a gloved hand attempting to smother the smell only brought it closer to the nose. Thus, death gives birth to French perfumery, decay and disgust disguised by violets and lavender, iris and musk. An irony, originally used to cover up leather, perfume ultimately comes to emulate it. A barber's razor strap, the smell of a saddle, a tobacco and bourbon imbued library full of leather-bound books. Cured becomes cuir, the luxurious floral leathers of Russia and Tuscany and Morocco, expensive purses and vintage touring cars, vaguely jasmine-scented as if spritzed by a light hand. And from cuir to queer, the veneer of sweat-stained chaps and battered motorcycle jackets, leather's skin-on-skin action, the smack of its animalic source. The kink and kin of skin permeated by skin, where does leather end and mine begin? Boxuse's broken-in boxing glove fisting your nose, Diorling, a cruel mistress, all but dear, while scandal and bandit crack their crinolines across tender skin. A nearly noxious romp through Ringling with Tsing and Cuir de Russie, a countess stealing a discreet smoke, then applying a fresh coat of lipstick plucked from her leather clutch. Another irony. While perfume can scent leather, leather cannot scent perfume. There exists no extract of it. What we smell as leather is actually the smell of elements used to tan and scent leather, created by playing chords of perfume notes to create what is called an accord. The left hand plays a bass line of birch tar, patchouli, vetiver, styrax, and iris. The right hand, in turn, may finger more feral notes of beaver gland and labdanum, or, refined with vanilla or fruit, may tune leather softer, a leather note more mute, sueded, played with kid gloves. And I'll close tonight with a piece called Jedi, D-J-E-D-I, which is about a perfume I never thought I would get to smell because Guerlain only made it for like about a year to 2 years back in the 1920s, and bottles of it today go for about $10,000. And other than that, I'll just let you hear it. It's too bad that you're not with me because I have a sample of it that I let people smell if I'm doing a reading live, but hopefully I'll get to see you someday and you can come smell it. Jedi, 1926. Someone scores a priceless bottle, vintage 1927, offers a sample, just a drop or two at the bottom of a tiny tube, sold for a princely sum, which you spend. It arrives. For days you only gaze at it, attempt to sniff it through the glass, up near the stopper, to avoid opening it, using it up. You read what little description is available to prepare yourself, so when the time comes, you can attempt to appreciate it on as many levels as possible before it vanishes, gone forever. Created by Jacques Guerlain, inspired by the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, and named for an Egyptian magician famed for resurrecting the dead, Jedi is stark departure, alien, anti-Guerlain, sucked dry of all voluptuary, what Roja Dove described as, quote, the driest perfume of all time. And so, you select a humid night to extend the scent and apply it. Mineral, medicinal, smoke curling from a stone bowl at the limbic liminal doorway to a tomb. Outside, the smell of dry, reedy vetiver carried on a hot wind blowing over sun-baked bones. And something animalic, a jackal sinuous in the background, an ephemeral ghost raised briefly from the past. And though you stay awake as long as possible, you descend to dreams, disquieted. In the morning, Jedi has dissipated like smoke. Distant country you can never again visit, sunk beneath the sand. Okay, well, I would love to open it up for questions if anyone has any about these pieces or the process or mushrooms or perfume or whatever. And let's see, looking to see if there are any coming in. While I'm waiting to see if any questions come in, answer to the question that nobody has asked yet. What perfume am I wearing right now? I am wearing vintage Cabochard Gray, which is actually kind of a leather smell too. Kind of smells like suede leather. Let's see if there are any questions coming in. Someone is Googling lobster mushroom, which is great. They're very cool. They're out this time of year too. For those of you that are looking, they like sandy soil, and they're bright orange. I mean, it looks like a cooked lobster peeking up from the ground, and actually smells a bit like seafood too. Let's see. Any other questions coming in? While waiting for those, let's see. Some of the other essays in the book, besides the perfume ones and the sequence at the end that's about the fracking in the Bakken in North Dakota, also includes, let's see, essay about canning tomatoes, a long essay about being the subject of an online outrage when I called in what I thought was a an active shooter situation at the last university where I worked, and turned out to be a ROTC or an ROTC exercise that hadn't been advertised and was completely unmarked. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, you'll have to read some more in it. Let's see, any other coming in? Feel free to ask any questions. I would love to hear from you. Let's see, what else? Perfume. If usually if I'm doing a live reading, if you have a chance to see me, I try to bring samples of the perfumes that I read about so that people can sniff them and get a sense, some of which because they're really rare. And I have like an archivist's kind of attention to it, that I want to smell things before they're gone from the world forever, even though I know that uses them up to pour out the drops for people to smell them. But I also want people to understand it and be able to smell what I'm smelling. So yeah, sharing the jetty, and also like a lot of the leather perfumes that I described in the queer, and also bringing in like Chanel number 5. I have a piece about Chanel number 5, and a lot of people know it, like they know of the perfume, like it's famous, right? But not a lot of people have smelled it, so that's pretty interesting. And I'll admit it, I actually don't like Chanel number 5. Like I get it, I understand it, but it's not my favorite. I don't know if that disqualifies me from perfume forever. Okay, so question coming in: how did I choose the form of the lobster mushroom poem? That, you know, it's really strange. I was just writing about lobster mushrooms, and then I was realizing that it kind of overlapped with writing about writing in hybrid form between poetry and nonfiction. And yeah, and I guess it just started becoming an outline, like kind of almost a choose your steps, like how do you proceed through this, how do you write this, and ended up becoming sort of an outline. I come to nonfiction from writing poetry, and form was always very, very important to me. And quite often I had trouble writing a poem until I figured out what form it needed to be in, how the form and the content work together to amplify whatever it is that I'm talking about. And I think once I figured out that I could talk about lobster mushrooms and nonfiction at the same time and kind of blend, so you couldn't quite tell which I was talking about at what time, then that's when I hit on it. Let's see. Someone asked, smell is so prevalent in your work. What leads you to that sense over others? I'm not sure that I'm led to that sense over others in general. I like the challenge of it. A good friend of mine, who's Jean Dubrave, who's also written a book called Through Smoke that's kind of like Bluettes, but about perfume. It's gorgeous. You should go find it. But she got me into perfume. And I liked the challenge of it. It's really, really hard to write about smell. We tend to think of it as describing smells as it smells like this, it smells like that. comparing it or identifying notes in it, like vanilla, cut grass, something like that. But it was really fun to read perfume blogs and others who are writing about smell, and to challenge myself to try to write using that sense, because we're so used to writing about especially sight, but also touch, but smell and somewhat related taste don't come into it as much. Let's see. So yeah, I love the challenge of writing about smell. And apparently, when I was done with this collection too, the decants, I ended up writing almost a whole other manuscript that was also about perfume, and smell, and the role of smell, because it was it's so tricky. I didn't have it out of my system yet. Let's see. We probably have time for one more question if anyone has one. But yeah, let me see. Oh, someone asked about my process. I think I sort of answered that when I talked about trying to pair form and content. And that's a big part of it, that as I'm working with content, I tend to have trouble starting to write something until I've kind of hit on what form goes with it. But as far as my process, I'm someone who does a lot of research. Um, I don't tend to write about myself very much, um, but I love doing research. I love falling down research rabbit holes, and and that's a danger too, because it feels like writing. It feels like I'm doing the work of writing, but it's not. It's just reading a bunch of stuff that's cool. But at some point, I have to put my butt in my seat and do more than just come back and say, here's a bunch of cool facts I found, and transform them into something that's meaningful and interesting. Um, so yeah, I'll tend to get very, very deep into a particular subject, whether it is perfume or mushrooms or monstrous bodies, which was what my last manuscript was about. And then after a while, I surface and start trying to figure out what forms to pair with it. Let's see. What would you suggest to someone who wanted to write more about smell in their work? Um, I would say, the perfume blogs were a lot of what did that for me. If you go to something like the Perfume Posse or Kafkaesque or perfume smelling things, there's a lot of blogs online, and see how they're writing about smell. But in a thumbnail of it, a lot starts with just, what do you smell? What notes do you smell? Like I said before, vanilla, cut grass, leather, wood, fruit, things like that. So, just smells. And then also trying to push past that. Smell is inherently synesthetic because it goes to your limbic brain, where your earliest animal um, impressions, reactions were coded before they're interfered with language. So there's already an overlap between senses. And we talk a lot about smell in terms of other senses. So we'll say a smell is green or warm or plush, or angular. So talking about it in terms of shape, touch, sound, a smell is loud. So you can do that, use synesthesia. And then you can also start doing it by thinking of it in terms of other visuals too. Like if the smell was a scene that you were watching in a movie, what kind of movie would you be watching? What's going on in that picture? Um, someone, this Luca Turin, who's a perfume critic, described, I'm blanking on which Dior it was, but one of the new Diors, as looking like there was a car driving off of a pier while an explosion was going on in the background, and a hero was saving a woman from drowning in the water. And he said it just seemed cataclysmic as soon as you push the button on it. So trying to extend yourself more that way. Well, I think our time is up. Thank you so much for joining me. It was really exciting to do this format of reading, and thank you so much for your questions and for listening. And I hope to get to meet you all in person. Thanks again. Bye.